The boardroom was completely silent. 8 executives stared at the presentation slides I'd been showing them for the past hour. My father, Thomas Reese, sat at the head of the table, squinting at the logo on the final slide. "CR Strategy and Operations," he read aloud, confused. His eyes moved from the screen to me, standing confidently at the front of the room. Recognition dawned slowly across his face. "Wait, that's you?" I smiled calmly, professionally. "Yes, that's me, the consultant you've been working with for the past 6 months." The silence deepened. My father's mouth opened, then closed. He had no words. For once in my life, Thomas Reese was completely speechless, and I was about to make this moment even better. I clicked to my final slide, a comprehensive summary of every recommendation I'd made to him 5 years ago when I worked at his firm. Recommendations he'd dismissed, ideas he'd stolen without credit, solutions he'd ignored because I was just his daughter, not a real employee. "My name is Callie Reese," I said clearly, looking directly at him. 5 years ago, my father made me work at his firm for free to build character. I was told I needed to earn my place the hard way, that real experience came from struggle. Now he pays me $400 an hour for that same expertise he once called inexperienced. The COO actually smiled. My father's face had gone completely pale. This was my victory, finally. I was 24 when I first walked into my father's firm. Fresh MBA, high hopes, heels that were too tight and pinched my feet. I'd been so nervous that morning, wanting to prove myself to him. Thomas had met me in the lobby with a handshake, professional and distant. "You'll start as an unofficial intern," he'd explained. "No special treatment just because you're family. You'll earn your way up the hard way, like I did." I nodded, grateful for the opportunity. I didn't know yet what unofficial intern actually meant. I didn't know that it was code for unpaid, unrecognized, invisible. I was so eager to prove myself that I didn't see the trap he was setting until I was already caught in it. Within my first week, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. The real interns, mostly sons of my father's friends and business partners, received paychecks, actual salaries. They had email addresses, business cards, and titles like summer analyst or junior associate. I got tasks, coffee runs, slide formatting, document filing. No title, no official email, no voice in meetings. When I asked about it, my father's assistant looked uncomfortable. "You're here to learn the business from the ground up," she said carefully. "It's different when it's family." Different. That word would haunt me for 2 years. Different meant I worked twice as hard for nothing. Different meant invisible labor. Different meant my contributions didn't count because I was related to the owner. I questioned why I wasn't included in client meetings I prepared materials for, why my research was presented by others without acknowledgement, why my name never appeared on project documentation. Thomas shrugged every time I brought it up. "That's the real world, Callie. You learn by watching. It builds resilience and character." His favorite word, character, as if being treated like unpaid labor built anything except resentment. I learned something else during those meetings I wasn't invited to. Silence doesn't build character. Silence builds anger. The kind that simmers quietly, getting hotter over time, until it eventually boils over. I was learning all right, just not what my father intended to teach me. I was learning exactly who he was, and planning accordingly. My first big project was a process improvement deck addressing a major bottleneck in their operations. I'd spent 3 weeks researching, analyzing data, interviewing staff, and building a comprehensive solution. The presentation was polished and professional. I was so proud of it. Then my father's COO presented it to the executive team. My slides, my analysis, my recommendations, without mentioning my name once. Afterwards, I confronted my father. Why wasn't I credited? He looked genuinely confused by the question. "That's how it works here, Callie. Ideas belong to the team. You'll understand when you've been here longer." I smiled and thanked him for the explanation. But that night, I started a private folder on my personal laptop. Documentation, timestamps, proof. I was building my own case now. The final straw came after a failed product launch cost the company significant money in client trust. I'd seen the problems coming months in advance. During a team meeting, I suggested a company-wide operation audit to identify systemic issues before they cause more damage. My father cut me off mid-sentence. "You've been here 2 years, Callie. Maybe stick to what you actually know instead of trying to fix things you don't understand." His dismissal was public and humiliating. Everyone at the table looked away. The next day, my father announced a comprehensive operations audit. His idea, he claimed, a strategic initiative he'd been considering. My exact recommendation without a word of credit. That evening, I made my decision. I was done being invisible, done being free labor, done proving myself to someone who would never see me. My resignation email was 2 lines long. "Thank you for the opportunity to learn about the business. I'm stepping away to explore other paths that align with my professional goals." I left my visitor keycard on the reception desk. No dramatic exit speech, no tearful confrontation, just silence. My father called that evening, confused. "You're just giving up?" he asked. I almost laughed. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm just done working for free." I hung up before he could respond. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. For 2 years, I'd been trying to earn his respect. Now I understood the truth. His respect was never available to me. Not because I hadn't earned it, but because he decided from the start that I never would. That realization hurt. But it also freed me completely. I spent the next year rebuilding my life from scratch. I waited tables at a downtown restaurant to pay bills. I freelanced presentation design for startups, charging what I was worth. One founder hired me to streamline his investor pitch process. I restructured everything, making it clearer and more compelling. His close rate tripled within 2 months. He referred me to 2 other founders. They referred me to 3 more. Word spread quietly through the startup community. "There's this consultant who actually understands operations," people said. My calendar started filling up. I was building something real, something mine, something my father's name couldn't touch or diminish. For the first time in years, I felt proud of my work because it was actually credited to me. 2 years after leaving, I officially registered CR Strategy and Operations. Small team, lean overhead, profitable from month 1. I focused on back-end operation strategy for growing companies, process improvement, team structure, efficiency optimization, everything I tried to do at my father's firm, but for clients who valued my expertise. Nobody in my network knew who my father was. I'd never mentioned him. My work stood on its own merit, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Then I heard through a mutual contact that my father's company was struggling badly. High turnover, missed projections, toxic culture driving away talent. "They're looking for a management consultant," the contact mentioned casually. I smiled slowly. "Tell them I might know someone who could help." I submitted a proposal using only my firm name, no personal details, no indication who owned the company. The board reviewed it blindly alongside proposals from 3 larger consulting firms. My approach was comprehensive but affordable. My timeline was realistic. My case studies were impressive. They chose my firm unanimously. The contract was signed before my father even knew the details. When I received the signed agreement, I laughed out loud in my apartment. Thomas Reese had just hired his daughter as a consultant. The daughter he told to stick to what she knew. The daughters whose ideas he'd stolen and dismissed. He had no idea yet, but he would find out soon, and I was going to enjoy every second of that revelation. I insisted all initial work happen remotely through a project manager proxy. I built the systems, wrote the reports, and created the improvement plans, but someone else presented them in meetings. My recommendations were implemented immediately. Team workflows were reorganized, performance evaluation systems were updated, decision-making processes were streamlined. Within 3 months, the company's operations were running more efficiently than they had in years. "This consultant is saving us," the COO told the board. My father nodded in agreement, still completely unaware. Every recommendation I made was something I'd suggested years ago. Every solution was one he'd dismissed when it came from me. But now, paying for it, he finally listened. The irony was delicious. The validation was even sweeter. After 6 months of successful implementation, they requested a final in-person presentation. My proxy informed them I was available for a face-to-face meeting. I chose the date carefully, a Tuesday morning. I arrived early, set up my laptop, and waited calmly. The board members filed in, greeting me warmly. They'd seen my results, but never met me personally. Then my father walked through the door. He was looking at his phone, not paying attention. When he glanced up and saw me standing at the head of the conference table, he froze completely. His face went through several expressions: confusion, recognition, shock, disbelief. I smiled professionally. "Good morning, everyone. Shall we begin?" The room felt electric with tension. This was the moment I'd been working toward for years. My father found his voice finally. "You?" It came out strained, almost a whisper. The board members looked between us, sensing the dynamic but not understanding it fully. "Yes, me," I replied calmly. He swallowed hard. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell me it was you?" I let the question hang in the air for a moment. Then I asked one of my own. "Would you have hired me if you'd known?" The silence was absolute. He opened his mouth, closed it. We both knew the answer. No. He never would have hired his daughter, because in his mind, I was still the inexperienced intern who needed to learn her place, not the consultant who just saved his company. His silence was my answer, and my vindication. I handed out printed invoices to each board member: professional, itemized, transparent. "This is my consulting rate," I explained clearly. $400 per hour, the same rate charged by the male consultants with similar experience that you've told me have real expertise. I looked directly at my father. "The same expertise you once told me I didn't have." Thomas swallowed visibly. His face was red, but he couldn't argue with results. The board had seen the improvements. The metrics didn't lie. One board member, a woman in her 50s, nodded at me with obvious respect. "Money well spent," she said firmly. "Your recommendations have been transformative." Another board member agreed. My father said nothing. He just stared at the invoice in his hands, finally understanding what his dismissal had cost him, both professionally and personally. The board requested a new leadership structure as part of my final recommendations. I'd identified that the company's biggest weakness was centralized decision-making that bottlenecked progress. My framework recommended Thomas step aside from daily operations to make room for innovative leadership. I didn't write it with spite, just professional clarity backed by data. The company needed fresh perspectives, new energy, less ego-driven management. The board voted to implement my recommendations fully. Thomas was moved to an advisory role, reduced responsibilities, limited authority. He signed the restructuring agreement without argument. What could he say? That the consultant who'd saved his company was wrong? That his daughter didn't know what she was talking about? The evidence proved otherwise. He'd been outvoted, outmaneuvered, by me, finally. After the final presentation, my father asked to speak privately. We walked to an empty conference room. He looked older somehow, tired. He started, "I want you to understand why I did it that way. It was about discipline, teaching you to struggle. That's how I was raised. That's how I built this company." I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I spoke calmly. "You wanted me to earn something you were freely giving to everyone else. That wasn't about building character. That was about control." He flinched. "You never gave me a chance to prove myself fairly. You just decided I hadn't earned respect yet, and you never planned to change your mind." He had no response, because I was right. We both knew it. I walked away from that conversation and that building with my payment in full. The firm recovered under new leadership. My recommendations created lasting change. Culture improved, retention increased, profits stabilized. Thomas remained in his advisory role, attending quarterly meetings but holding no real power. I declined a permanent consulting contract with them. "I have other clients waiting," I explained professionally. It was true, but it was also about boundaries, about not letting my father back into my professional life. I'd proven my point, gotten my vindication. Now I was moving forward without him. The firm sent me a glowing recommendation letter. I filed it away, barely looking at it. I didn't need their validation anymore. I'd found my own. The firm referred me to 2 other legacy businesses struggling with similar issues. "She completely transformed our operations and culture," one executive told them. "Best consultant we've ever worked with." My reputation grew quickly through those networks, established companies that needed fresh perspectives without the ego of typical consultants. I delivered results, not lectures, solutions, not theories. My client list expanded steadily, and this time my name was on every presentation, every report, every recommendation. CR Strategy and Operations, Callie Reese. No hiding, no anonymity, just my work properly credited. The success felt different now, earned through my own efforts, recognized on my own merits, not filtered through someone else's approval. This was what I'd wanted all along, to be seen for what I could actually do. One of the golden boys from my intern days called me 6 months later. He'd been one of the paid interns who got fast-tracked while I was formatting slides. "Hey, Callie, I heard you really built something impressive. Must be nice working for yourself." I could hear the condescension hidden in his friendliness, the assumption that I'd gotten lucky, that my success was somehow less legitimate than his corporate position. "It's good work," I replied simply. Then I ended the call politely. I had 3 client meetings that afternoon and no time for his validation seeking. He wanted me to acknowledge his success, to compare our paths, to make him feel good about his choices. But I'd already moved past needing approval from people like him. I was too busy building something real. A business magazine profiled my company 8 months after the reveal. "From legacy disappointment to independent success," read the headline. They'd interviewed several clients who praised my approach and results. The article mentioned my family background briefly, but focused primarily on my methodology and achievements. I was invited to speak on a panel titled "From Family Business to Independent Powerhouse" at a major business conference. I accepted immediately. The panel included 3 other entrepreneurs who'd left family companies to build their own success. We shared stories of nepotism, dismissal, and eventual triumph. The audience was packed, standing room only. People connected deeply with our experiences. After the panel, dozens approached me asking for advice. I stayed for 2 hours, talking to each person who waited. During the Q&A session, someone asked a question that stopped me cold. "If you could go back and change how your father treated you, would you?" The room went silent, waiting for my answer. I thought about it honestly, about the pain of being invisible, the humiliation of having my work stolen, the years of trying to earn respect that was never coming. Then I thought about where I was now, what I'd built, who I'd become. "No," I answered finally, "because I'd still end up here, doing this work, helping these clients. But I wouldn't have stayed quiet as long. I would have left sooner, trusted myself earlier. That's the only thing I change. My timeline, not his treatment." The room erupted in applause. Several people were crying. My answer had resonated deeper than I'd expected. I opened my laptop the next morning in my office. Minimalist design, clean lines, everything organized exactly how I wanted it. My space, my rules, my success. I had 3 new client inquiries waiting in my inbox, 2 referrals from existing clients, 1 from someone who'd seen my conference talk online. I scheduled consultations with all of them. Then I opened my accounting software and created a new invoice. Client name, Reese & Company. For the advisory board meeting my father had requested my attendance at. My hourly rate, my terms, my expertise finally compensated properly. I clicked send and watched the email disappear. Then I smiled, remembering something my father had told me years ago. "Character can't be bought, Callie. You have to earn it through struggle." He'd been right about one thing: character can't be bought. But now he was paying $400 an hour for mine. The payment from my father's firm cleared within 3 business days. Professional, prompt, no arguments or negotiations. Just a wire transfer for the full invoiced amount. I stared at the bank notification on my phone, feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't about the money. It never had been. It was about recognition, about finally being valued for the expertise I'd always had, about my father acknowledging, if only through payment, that I'd been right all along, that the ideas he'd dismissed were worth something, that the daughter he treated as free labor was actually a skilled professional. The money was just a symbol, the proof, the undeniable evidence that I'd won. Not through anger or revenge, but through competence, through building something he eventually needed and couldn't ignore. I started mentoring young women trying to break into consulting, particularly those dealing with family expectations and professional dismissal. I taught them what I'd learned the hard way. Document everything. Know your worth. Don't wait for permission to leave situations that don't value you. Build your own path instead of trying to fit into someone else's vision. 3 of my mentees launched their own firms within a year. One specifically focused on helping family businesses modernize their nepotistic cultures. I gave a reference letter for her first major client. The cycle was changing. My father called occasionally now. Brief, awkward conversations about business trends. Never apologizing, never acknowledging what had happened between us. But the dynamic had shifted permanently. He asked my opinion now, carefully, respectfully, because he'd learned what it cost to dismiss me. I kept my answers professional and brief. Some relationships can't be repaired, but they can be redefined. On my terms this time. Always on my terms. And that felt like the victory I'd been working toward all along.